Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You're super welcome. Now, Brandon, you are one of our younger students. You're 23, is that right?
Just turned 24. Yeah.
Just turned 24, which is fantastic. I always say to people, whenever I talk about you or any of our younger students, I always kind of joke and say, who here wishes they did this when they were 24? And everyone puts up their hands and thinks, oh, God, I wish I did this when I was younger. What inspired you to join our program and become a coach in the first place?
Yeah. I'm a DJ. I travel the world DJing and I run nightclubs as well. And I was sort of in a destructive cycle, self-destructive cycle of abusing alcohol and party drugs. And when lockdown happened, I stopped I was forced to stop DJing and running clubs, but it gave me time to reflect and realize that I did have a problem. And when I realized I had a problem, I asked myself a question, and it was like, there's got to be more to life than this. And I was just feeling that. And I was still partying when lockdown happens. And I'm like, I'm not even in clubs and I'm still you know, partying and doing drugs. And I asked myself, well, there's got to be more to life than this. I love DJing and I love running clubs, but it's and being in this cycle is not very fulfilling. So I got sober. First of all, I took care of myself. And that's when the ideas started popping in, and I just had I felt so alive and all these ideas came in, and that's when coaching, and because I've always watched and read books, but I'd read a book or watch a podcast on personal development, and then I'd go on a 3-day bender and forget everything I had learnt. So it's just about, I was sticking, the information was sticking, and I'm like, this is what I'm passionate about. And so I was, it was probably a week or two, listening to Jay Shetty and a few other, Tom Bilyeu. And I'm like, man, I'd love to coach. I've got a platform and I want to use it to make an impact. And that's why I sort of said, coaching's the way to go, because I can learn the skills to actually make a difference.
Yeah, awesome. I love that you said that there was a moment when you realized that you had a problem. And I think that's a really important tipping point, because especially for many other young people watching this versus really anyone, anyone can resonate with having an addiction, if it's drugs, alcohol, or even a lot of people are addicted to things like Facebook. A lot of people are addicted to work, right? It just plays out in a different way.
Yeah.
What was that moment like? How did you get to that point where you reflected enough to say, you know what, this is not just fun. This is not just me having a good time and being young. I've actually got a problem with this. What was that moment for you?
Yeah. So I was 18, I was into it quite young, and because I started when I was 13, and we were quite successful, got pretty well known in the 13 to 18. And as soon as I hit 18, we were touring the world. So it's like I was straight into the deep end. As soon as I was 18, I was still growing up, and, I was a young man that had this spotlight, and it's not normal for a young 18-year-old, to, in the UK, we had paparazzi and things like that. It was a lot to take on. So instead of actually feeling all those emotions and that, I was just, it was fun partying, but there wasn't much conscious thought behind it. I was just sort of going through the motions. And I didn't realize until a few years later that it was a problem. I just thought it was the norm. You go out when you're 18, and that's the biggest problem these days is, someone's daughter, someone's son will go to a club when they're 18 and see everyone doing drugs and binge drinking and think it's normal. So they start doing it as well, and it's not normal. And I didn't know that until so many years later. I just thought it was a normal thing to do. But then I started, going a bit too far, having a few too many drinks, staying out for 2 days rather than going home. And it was taking an effect on me mentally and physically. And also my family my mum was worried sick about me all the time. And she just had a feeling like something bad was going to happen. And it did. I overdosed a few times. And even then, I'd overdose a few times, have to go to hospital for taking too much. And I would just keep doing it. And it was a cycle that I've found very hard to break out of. And it was coronavirus, the pandemic was sort of a blessing in disguise because I really had time to reflect and actually take that step back and like analyze everything I had gone through.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much in that I want to speak to. One thing that I'll say straight away is I really love the insight of the power of taking back and reflecting and stepping back. And I think that coronavirus really has given so many people that. Like I've even had that where I've just had moments where I'm like, all right, like, and really asking ourselves powerful questions like, is this really what I want? Am I really moving in the direction that I want? You know, one of the things that I really like to think about is, if I was to look back on this moment and reflect back in maybe 10 years time with a wiser me, when I look back at this and think, good work, I'd always think, oh, we need to change that. So I love that insight that you've shared. Also, I think it's a really important thing to point out that you've got a great example of a lifestyle that you lived from a really young age that wasn't really normal. And you were in the spotlight from an extremely young age. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be 13 and have a level of fame and a level of responsibility. Like when I was 13, I think I don't know what I was doing. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know.
It's a blur.
I'm not even sure. But probably going to house parties and trying to sneak out of my parents' house or something like that. And I think it's an important thing to acknowledge that, like in your world, like a lot of people can resonate with this in their own ways, you were just managing yourself the best way you knew how. And it just happened to be through drugs and alcohol. And then you realized that wasn't healthy for you and you wanted to make a change. Now, since you've made that change, tell us about how you've started to feel more alive and feel more inspired, because you're like one of the most excited and energetic people in the school, I think. Like you genuinely care about other people. You're genuinely kind all the time. You're doing what you can to be able to support others. What inspires you to be like that now?
I think it's my mum has always been that way. Grown up with a single mum, and she's just taught me to be kind to everyone, and that's something that I've always been, kind to everyone. And whether it's people coming up and asking for photos with me, like when I'm on tour, I was always nice and I'd make time for people. But when I was on drugs and alcohol, sometimes I wasn't as my genuine kind self, and that was also taking a toll. And I noticed that every interaction you have with someone, like when I'm sober, I ask myself a question: how can I make this moment the most magical it can be for this person that I'm interacting with? And when I was on drugs, I wasn't. It was very ego driven. It was a very ego driven lifestyle, and I was thinking more about myself than others, and that's not me. So I realized that it was just altering my, because I know at core I've always been kind, and I've always been a very thoughtful person. And when I was doing drugs and binge drinking, I definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
So.
Since you've joined TCI, what is it that you've loved about the community and about what you're now doing as a coach? I know that you've jumped straight into pro bono clients. I know you've already got your first paying client, which is epic, which is amazing. What are you loving about the journey and actually implementing this?
I just absolutely love the whole community as well. Like just, I joined TCI, and not even like the learning, online learning is amazing, but just having the support and meeting new people. When I got sober, the one thing, the biggest thing that stood out to me was how much I just enjoy having a conversation with someone, like just being able to talk to someone new and hear a bit about their story. And it's just amazing, because when I was on drugs, I would talk to people and there wasn't much meaning behind the conversations. You're just spitting out like random shit. Yeah. And like now it's very thoughtful. The conversations I'm having are more meaningful, and TCI is just such a good community. As soon as you join, you go introduce yourself in the group, and so many people get behind you. I've made so many friends, and they help you. ride your journey, because it can be very overwhelming, joining up and not knowing where to start. But that's what you find your mentors are like. You've helped me a lot. A few other coaches have helped me. So it's just a great community. And yeah, I couldn't be more grateful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love how much you care about it. I love that you genuinely want to make a difference for others. I think in a way, your journey has been a real blessing for you.
It has. It's been my greatest teacher.
Right. Because you get it. You're not just someone who's preaching it. You've been through an experience, and now you're guiding other people to their own success, which is So Brandon, I know that your story will be an inspiration to many people, young people, and just generally, I think all people that can resonate with your story in some way, shape or form. What would you say to someone who is watching this and considering joining TCI and becoming a coach for themselves?
Yeah, becoming a coach, I've toured the world. I've done it all. But being a coach is the most fulfilling thing that I have ever done. And, I feel like if you have that itch, that burning sensation inside of you, that passion for serving and helping people, I think you should do it too.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Matt.